Raising.
Yes, my cocoa has been fired. We are back from my Caribbean excursion, headed into 2025. Happy almost New Year to you. We've got a lot to get to as we close out 2024. I've got a couple of big stories I know I want to talk about. Hong Kong and Bitcoin Strategic Reserve is the one that really comes to mind. I also saw the plane going down in South Korea with our homeboy interim president there in South Korea kind of getting the job and then not having the job. And then all of a sudden, giant plane crash. I don't know if you caught
Yeah,
that.
and there's another plane crash coming out of from Russian airspace, which no one takes responsibility for, but apologizes nonetheless.
Yeah.
A couple articles that pop out to me about just the latest maneuverings of the Doge team, not Doge the cryptocurrency, but the Department of Government Efficiency team.
Grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
Because there's been a little bit of, I think we talked about maybe the collision, the butting of heads, ideals of Elon running into the trajectory of the ideals of the incoming administration, and perhaps not seeing eye to eye on certain specifics, and raising money. I just think also about the money being raised. You know, Sam Altman raised all that money, but looks like snapping your fingers and raising $6 billion is no longer a magic trick. That's just what you do when you want to do AI companies, apparently.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of dollars to build artificial general intelligence. I think what Elon and Trump, I mean, my biggest prediction, and we'll kind of make that the theme of today's show, is just everything leading into 2025. But my prediction from last episode is that there can only be one main character. And I think you're seeing a lot of that play out, especially in the mainstream media. I think the CNNs and the MSNBCs of the world really leaning into that, the what did they call Elon? The kind of assistant president, and then Trump coming out and saying, no, I'm still the president, and leaning into him as this like co-presidency. Is what's happening. But why would Donald Trump ever admit that? Of course he's not going to admit that, but I also think that if Musk has effectively paid for his spot at the table in whatever shape and form that looks like, he is now shaping and going to be shaping a lot of that policy. I think there was the threat of the government shutdown. I have no doubt we're going to see that come back up again. He's saying no bills should make it, unless they're actually cutting spending. He's talking about, I saw something about making members of Congress take a cognitive test. I mean, like things like he's going to run this like a business. And I think that's probably maybe my other bigger prediction, at least how Elon relates to the federal government and what he intends to do is I do think he is going to try to run it like a business, and that will require efficiency. We should be not spending money where it is wasteful, and we should be spending money where it produces more money, or there's some other benefit or gain to be made from it. I think a lot of the bloat in the government defense contracting space, people who sit around, no offense, there's maybe there is offense, they're sitting around, they're not doing anything, and there are better ways to use that human capital. And maybe it's training them how to use their new AI assistant, or maybe their AI assistant is the one babysitting them, making sure that they're doing their job. I don't know. I mean, biggest prediction though, government efficiency driven by Elon will continue to take center stage, and there will be some painful cuts, I believe, in order to create the true efficiency that's required. And I think, frankly, that we need.
Yeah, I think to take that last point first, I think you're absolutely correct. I think anyone who is a sober-minded, logical, rational individual who's listening to this podcast would agree that there are aspects of the American government that are inefficient. The same way that we would agree that our healthcare system, our education system. I mean, we can go down and just name the blank American system and agree there could be efficiencies, right? So that's a true statement. Then we know that the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, will obviously have work to do. But I think what you're suggesting from before, what you were saying is it's going to be really messy and uncomfortable. And it's going to start to poke those nerve endings of certain people of power. Whereas right now, I think the Batman and Robin, the president and assistant president, I mean, you call it a little duo, however you want to call it, but we know that there was a conversation where Elon came in and said, hey, you have all the power and the people. I have a platform called X, and I also have all the money. If we work together, then we can't be stopped. Like that's just like that's my pitch, right? Imagine that's the story, that's the context. And it all sounds great. And then you get into where it's like, well, we're gonna go now to the Department of Defense. Let's look at the contracts that Raytheon has versus Halliburton versus Northrop Grumman. And then is Elon gonna just start not tweeting, I always want to say tweeting, posting on X? Hey, just discovered, a slush fund in the something something department, gonna remove that and create the dump, and next thing you know, there's like 20 people who get totally pulled out from under the bed, big raking light shown on them saying, you, sir, you have been stealing money for the last 10 years. Here's your balance sheet. Here's how much you've been paid. Here, and just start outing people. I mean, I want to say doxing. That's what you and I know, but I think that what we're going to start to see are important government officials effectively getting doxxed as part of this process, which is going to create a lot of pressure on these two individuals to try to navigate that really delicate line of the government losing faith in its leadership and the government actually making itself more efficient through its leadership.
Yeah, I think the concept of doxing, the way money flows in governments, I'm thinking about smart contracts being deployed. You think about the way a government contract gets awarded. There are then the prime contractors, then there are what they call the subcontractors, and those are the people who weren't actually part of the contractor's bid, but they're part of the job that the contractor is now going to bid out to a subcontractor. And then there are subcontractors on subcontractors. The pure inefficiency in that can be solved with cryptography, with smart wallets, with smart contracts that only funnel money when certain tasks have been accomplished and can track how that money is being deployed, when that capital is being allocated. I mean, I think of a giant branched logic flow chart. You think of like trickle down economics doesn't work in real life, but guess where it does work? It does work when it's powered by a smart contract. If you've got the government wallet at the top of the pyramid, and that's being redefined, and we're going to get to the Bitcoin strategic reserve and how that money gets. I mean, look, the whole premise of everything we have been predicting about the de-dollarization and what is happening right now, we got to unpack it. But to stick on my wallet theory here for a moment, if the government can know how much money it needs to spend and it can only allocate funds when certain requirements are met, you can make sure with 100% blockchain-based transparency and efficiency that it happens exactly the way you tell it to, exactly the way you need those AI agents to go execute whatever I tell them to do in their work. And I'm using that to say of like, yeah, I do think that there will be jobs that get replaced, direct jobs that are previously human jobs in the US government that get replaced with an AI agent, whether that's to file your taxes on FedNow, right? Or some other Department of Labor or Department of Education. There will be roles that are perhaps better suited for a smart contract or a piece of technology. Now, there is a real dystopian angle that we should explore in everything I just described. But on the surface level, which isn't the only place you can stay, but on the surface level, what Elon is talking about is that level of efficiency. Every dollar, every cent, every Satoshi, every Dogecoin being accounted for as it flows through the government system. And you can measure the outputs, the outcomes. Does the government work the way it should work for the American people? And shouldn't you and I own a little piece of that? Shouldn't we be invested? I'm not going to be buying 30-year bonds. I'm not going to be buying, 5-year treasury notes. No, what am I going to be buying to invest in America? Bitcoin, baby.
Or how about you buy, instead of 30-year treasury bonds, you buy 3-month efficiency yield bonds. You effectively have a new derivative product wherein you can short the American government based on certain areas. Like in a time of summer when we know there's no incursions happening on the US time, hey, let's short the military. And when it's back to school in September, you better not be shorting education. You can go ahead and try that a different time. Like I wonder if there's ways where the ebb and flow, like you say, the business of running a government, we take it for granted. We take it as a matter of course that there are obviously bureaucratic rabbit holes that we fall down, and there's so much money and time being wasted. We laugh. What's how many jokes are there about? Well, got to go down to the DMV, spend 3 hours waiting in line and not get what you need. Like that as a little encapsulated bit of Americana that really is something that, it only exists in US parlance. There's a whole bunch of other ones we can talk about of going to a place and having some inefficient experience that we don't like. And to the point where sometimes people don't even want to go to the doctor. They don't want to go down to the HMO and take a ticket and wait in the waiting room because they know they're going to take 4 or 5 hours to be seen by someone as they get triaged out with all the trauma. So is there a better way? And of course, that's going to be the dawn of the opening of this new relationship. But let's just take a step back from the two of these guys, from Elon and the Trump administration, kind of trying to work their magic on making the government more efficient. Out of one side of his mouth, Elon is talking about that. But let's bring out the other side is a little bit of AI talk. It's a little bit of, playing catch up, but maybe in a different narrative to what's going on with Sam Altman. So there is a current race for all of our listeners, right? AI is something that is being developed by a lot of different companies. We all know OpenAI is run by a guy named Sam Altman, and he's very far forward with the chat GPT models and Sora video models and so forth. But then you have guys like Elon Musk. He's no slouch. He has Grok. He wants to Grok you in the new year with his new system that's going to be talking to the X platform. But then you have Sundar, who's got Gemini, not to be confused with the Winklevoss twins, who run a platform called Gemini, but Gemini AI by Google is its own thing. Let's not forget that Microsoft has a lot of interest in that as well, as it tries to bring Clear in your eyeballs as you fly planes to LinkedIn, to Call of Duty, to all the other systems that it's trying to manage across the world, and so on and so forth. I think that what we're going to see too is that with a power position that Musk enjoys currently, there is an opportunity to insinuate Grok and XAI into more government contracts than less.
Yes.
And if we believe that to be true, we know he's putting up satellites. We know he has Starlink to bring the internet to war-torn areas. We know that there are rockets that are being designed to literally go out of our solar system into the atmosphere of Mars and land right into, on their surface. So what would prevent the XAI from becoming the American Department of Defense AI, or the American Department of Justice AI, or you pick the American Department AI, and that might be where the first efficiencies come from. So where's that Grok going to go to first?
I think I saw this from this morning. Our boy Google CEO Sundar Pichai telling Google employees as we close out 2024 that 2025 will be, quote, critical year for the company. And that's really interesting news. I saw this on TechCrunch earlier this morning, basically in a all employee memo. He says, I think 2025 will be critical. I think it's really important we internalize the urgency of this moment and need to move faster as a company. The stakes are high, end quote. And, we've watched Sundar, we've watched Google kind of, I say, fumble the ball here a little bit, but we know their search monopoly is being broken up. We know that's happening. We've covered that here. The government's saying they cannot have that monopoly over search. And so here comes Gemini, here comes AI, and the big fear, at least in my opinion, exactly what you're saying, the stakes are high for these other companies because now they're up against the man with the money and the man with the power. They're up against Batman and Robin, which is going to be really critical, and the stakes are really high.
Yeah, and I mean, to put maybe a punctuation mark on that, if you think about the motivation of all the individuals who are creating AI, there are different motivations, right? So you have Amazon. We didn't even mention Amazon and Jeff Bezos, right? Amazon is interested in creating AI, which is to do what? Well, let's just make some guesses. What if Amazon AI is principally designed to make it more efficient and effective for you to shop and purchase, and makes it more efficient for them to distribute the goods and services to you wherever you are in the world? That would make some sense, right? That's what their core business is. Maybe they'll put a little bit of that AI into Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services, to make all of their virtual machines that run and that power many companies, back-end systems that more efficient. Okay, well, that makes sense. Well, what's, Google worried about? And Pichai, well, if your search monopoly is being broken apart right now by the government, when I say government, you can also say Elon and the Trump administration in that same word, government. It's being broken up by them. Well, then your AI probably is going to be trying to make search a lot better so you don't lose your entire search business, because AdSense and all those sponsored search tools and terms and things that Google does and runs is their bread and butter. People talk about, oh, but YouTube and, oh, but Waze. Like, no, YouTube and Waze are just cost centers. I mean, maybe AI makes Waze more efficient, but this is about protecting search. So if you're in a business of shoring up some weaknesses, retrenching, your battle lines, digging your moats a little bit wider so that the drawbridges and the ladders can't come down over them quite as fast, then you're just distracted. You have these blinders on like a horse in Central Park, New York, just running that same little path and not worrying about all the beautiful lights and the beautiful trees. But then you have Sam Altman, who just says, no, 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 I'm here for altruism. I'm here to explore the universe. And then you have Musk, and who says, hey, I'm just here to make these cars drive better, make these satellites go higher, and make this government more efficient. It all feels like everyone's competing, but not. Like they each have their own little niche that they're coming into, which I think is kind of interesting.
Competing but not makes me think Web3 and the spirit of collabs. Of like,
That's right.
we're not competing. We can just find where the opportunities for collaboration are, where we overlap nicely enough to where it's a win-win for everybody. And my mind is going to all kinds of crazy places right now. When you were talking about the different departments and shorting the government, I started to think about the Kalshi, and I know we covered the platforms that were doing all of the election day betting and how all of those on-chain poly markets kind of rising to the surface, and now you can bet on anything. And then you briefly mentioned Sam Bankman-Fried. I know I'm scattered here a little bit, but as I look in the news here, I see a headline from the New York Sun from today. Musk says a pardon for Sam Bankman-Fried will, quote, fetch a high price as the FTX founders' lieutenants get shortened sentences. Let me read that again. Musk says a pardon for Sam Bankman-Fried will fetch a high price. They are telling us this is a pay-to-play game. This is a pay-to-play game.
That's big.
He's going to get pardoned. Of course he's going to get pardoned, and somebody's going to get paid because somebody needs him out because he's worth more out than he is in. And now you can probably go bet on it on Polymarket, even though the outcome's already determined.
That's a hot take. How many of the January 6th rioters can I bet on? Because are they all going to get pardoned? Do only some of them get pardoned? Are there nuances? Are there over-unders on how many get pardoned?
This is
Can I buy half points on whether or not the shaman gets out at the same time as everybody else?
It's crazy, right? We talk about pay to play. We talk about the democracy, comparing U.S. to other countries like China, where it's sort of a little bit more in your face in the way that those big companies run. But now here you see this uncomfortableness that you're talking about, this weirdness, this strangeness is going to be facilitated by blockchain. AI is the killer app. AI is going to be the thing that allows you to create the efficiencies, and blockchain and pay to play and the way those tokens move from wallet to wallet and whether they're worth anything or not, right? You could be betting with Doge, right? It could be pennies. They could be fake tokens, or it could be real money. And the people betting with real money are probably the people making the decisions. It's sad to say, but it does really start to solidify when they're saying it's going to fetch a high price. It's almost like they're out there bidding. They're out there pitching it to the investors of who wants to pay for his pardon.
Yeah, who wants to
take
back?
the other side
Who
of this
wants
bet.
or who wants to underwrite? Let's just put it that way, because that's what we all know in the U.S. is someone needs to be underwriting a deal or a bet or however you call it. Who's the creditor? Who says? Because on the one hand, it's like, well, look, Sam Bankman-Fried's a nice kid, right? We all know he got set up. We had to set somebody up. Gary's in on it. He's his godfather of his ex-girlfriend. I mean, come on, guys. It's Sam Bankman-Fried. He's a nice guy. Okay, well, Sam Bankman-Fried, why? Well, because he knows three guys. They got some drives. They have some new stuff they're working on. There's a lot of money to be made, and they're really aligned with these projects and these people. Okay, how much money do you think could get put into my latest Andreessen Horowitz bet that I put into Elon's XAI? How much of the $6 billion? Well, I think we could probably get one or two back. Okay, let's get Sam Bankman out. That sounds like a good price to release that kid to shore up a third of Andreessen Horowitz's A16Z commitment to Elon.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what Elon's thinking. When he says high price, he's saying, what are the bids?
To collaborate?
Who wants to
work
collaborate?
on this project?
Who wants to do the cross pollination between our two companies is, and you already hear the buzzwords, the corporate buzzwords coming in, and the intersection of corporate buzzwords, which bring their own inefficiencies by definition, and the government. Now we're laying cross pollination. We're laying all these terms like what's a great corporate buzz term when we say we're going to look to explore nuances in between our businesses to maximize opportunity at the edges or whatever it is. We're going to start drawing pyramids up top, big things on the bottom. We're going to invert it. We're going to hire this way. We have a funnel. I mean, all that PowerPoint slide-ness from Web 1 and Web 2 is suddenly now the Web 3 layer on top of the government. Yeah. Like, they let them in. All of the CEOs. The CEOs are going to help run the country.
Yes.
They're the ones in the news. They're the ones in the news today all the time talking about what they're doing. And they're going to help the government. And each one's trying to look shinier and more new and more fancy and more young and fresh face than the last. And you got to follow the money.
Mr. Musk ventures that he would be shocked if Bankman-Fried is not pardoned by President Biden.
Buy. It's a buy signal.
Check that poly market right now.
It's a buy signal.
And the one in all of this, when we talk about this kind of new world order, God, it sounds so big and bold, but it's like we've been calling it. So now I feel even more confident describing these things because they are now coming true, these predictions happening. The one guy who has been playing this collab game with the US government very well, Mark Zuckerberg. I was in the airport as I was flying to the islands and coming back, and the only ads that I saw everywhere in every airport were Meta open source AI. Open source is the way. Llama open source. Your AI deserves to be open source. We're open sourcing AI for the world benefit. Open source AI, open source AI. And you think about that, he's taking direct jabs at everybody else for creating these walled gardens. The Groks of the world, a private AI, these private AI over here that Sam Altman's got, whatever Gemini's doing over here. He's watching these walled gardens get set up, and he's already been burned at the stake for creating the original walled garden that he had to break down and create new rules. And now they've got Instagram teen accounts so that they're catering to everyone. They're working with the regulators. They're making healthier, better, safer choices for us as Americans, including open sourcing AI. The best AI from Facebook will be open source. I mean, that's crazy to think, but how far ahead is Zuckerberg at embedding his AI into all those government contracts that run through Meta, all the surveillance on the American people that they have, all the data that they have from Instagram and WhatsApp, and now Threads, which I've still said that was a 2024 prediction. Threads will re-enter the chat as this decentralized platform because it is Zuckerberg's release valve. It is his emergency release valve. He has a path to a decentralized Mastodon-run social network that he can claim, look, we don't own this. We don't collect any user data. They're using their Web3 login. It's run on a decentralized platform. They can take their friends with them. They're not in a walled garden. And yes, they can use our open source AI on Threads. So that matchup is being set up between this decentralized platform and the X platform it might just get installed as the platform of choice if Elon says so. But I don't think Zuckerberg's going to go down without a fight.
No, and this is, I'm so happy you brought him up because it is squaring up to be that cage battle that everyone had wanted for so long. Remember, there was a little bit of tit for
Yeah,
tat, I want to say
there
two
it
summers
is.
ago, and there's photographs of Zuckerberg like training with some Brazilians and some jujitsu, like floor rolling judo stuff. And
Yep.
then you got Musk with like his boxing gloves and talking about any place, anytime, and he wants a cage and all the pontification and all the, excitement and the circumstance. But I like what you brought up about Zuckerberg because it is that complete 180. It reminds me of it's some almost like a Kane from Kung Fu narrative of like walking the earth and finding yourself. It's some odyssey, right? I have to go and I have to battle the Hydra. I have to go and I have to, live on the island for however many years and days. I have to have penance and solitude and challenge. This is the narrative of Zuckerberg, right? The guy who started off with a business card that just said, I am the CEO, comma, bitch, who has now come a full 15 years later with children and a wife and a family and going to Congress and wall the garden and tearing the walls down. And as you were talking about that, I just imagine that movie voice guy going, in 2025, the Reds will rise. And it's going to come up out of the ocean like this redone Kraken. It's going to come rushing to the shore and just tidal wave everyone else. And they'll look and say, wow, how is it? As Zuckerberg comes riding in on the way to the shore as like this the prodigal son, because he has burned himself on the pyre. He has gone to that Capitol Hill and gotten into the pillory and had tomatoes thrown in his face. He had overstuffed senators ask him questions like, what is the nuance, Mr. Zuckerberg, between a like and a poke? And have to actually answer those questions without laughing in front of Congress and come all the way around to be the one thing that he swore way back when with that first business card that he would ever be, which is open sourced and a friend of the government. To be able to steer hard into that is so different than what X is doing, which is basically, I work for the government works for me, and I'm going to do what I want. Or to Altman's, which is in his own world of just, we live in this elevated state above all sovereign countries and governments and have this whole view of the world that's much more heady than anyone else, almost talking Zuckerberg-esque from years ago. So as it all kind of settles, it makes me wonder a little bit like, okay, well, if the open source AI is available to everyone, the open source AI is available through Threads, which I feel like we all kind of knee jerk said, it's just a Twitter copy. It's just a X pop. It's just a copy of Truth Social. It's a copy of post something, comment. Like there's nothing new. It's the separate thing. What is it? What is it? But now I'm starting to realize, no, it's a little bit like scooping away some of that magic from Reddit. It's scooping away some of, it's understanding that there needs to be more rabbit holes, more ways to fall down that hallway in the matrix, more ways to own your own key ring or have an agent who has your keys, who opens the doors that are allowed for you to open and exist in this place that is outside of any kind of rule system that's set up by any centralized organization. So my prediction, to throw another prediction out, is the indomitable Helen Toner, no relation, by the way, to Michael Toner, who believes in effective altruism, who left OpenAI because of concerns over Altman and his plans to do this crazy AI thing. She gets hired in 2025 by Zuckerberg to run the open source AI initiative, or at least be a part of it. That's my prediction.
I love the new cast of characters. I mean, some of them are the old characters, some of them are the new, but no doubt some of those moves are already happening. I think we may have covered it here, but the Coinbase chief marketing officer, Kate Rausch, I believe is the last name.
That's right.
Going over to OpenAI. That's a really interesting one to me. You've got big Web3 crypto dominance, now expertise in the marketing of that narrative that Coinbase has absolutely crushed. I mean, they literally fought the US government and won. I mean, that's the best way to put it is like, I mean, there's no better mark on your marketing CMO resume than to say we fought the US government for the last 4 years to operate and allow our customers to buy and sell crypto. We did it in a way that looked professional, that was professional. We backed up everything we said. We used data and analytics. They created, events and education material, and they really led the charge. So that
They
people
rang the bell at NASDAQ while they
exactly
were being sued.
they're legit, man. They're legit. Well, now they're going to get at least that talent that OpenAI is going to need, that level of legitimacy if they are going to make the inroads that Sam Altman wants to make in the government. I want to bring us all the way back around to Bitcoin Federal Reserve. We're talking about government efficiency. We're talking about the way transactions, generally speaking, within the government are going to change. We've talked about for more than a year now the overall narrative around the de-dollarization. I saw a great meme the other day about everyone thinks Bitcoin is soaring, past 100,000, but really what's happening is one Bitcoin is still worth one Bitcoin.
One Bitcoin.
And the US dollar is now worth less. And over time, that Bitcoin is just going to stay while the dollar goes down. It makes Bitcoin appear or seem more valuable when you put it in US dollars. But if you just count it in Bitcoin, one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. And Michael Saylor just bought another 230 million just yesterday. So and it dipped again. He got it down to 90 and he's buying. So you're talking every little dip sub 100K. This guy is piling in millions and millions and millions. Big prediction you may have already made, but the Michael Saylor will be the new character. He's already being introduced to the American people. If you ask your uncle at the Thanksgiving or Christmas Day table if they've heard of this guy, Michael Saylor, or MicroStrategies, you probably hear, oh yeah, I've heard of MicroStrategies. I've seen this guy on the news. Well, old Laser Eyes has already been introduced to the American people. He will be, I believe, a central casting character in Q1 2025, getting that invite, no doubt, to the inauguration, probably escorted in on a SpaceX rocket courtesy of Elon. He'll drop right into the National Mall to cut a deal, to find those opportunities to collaborate where it's a win-win for everybody in the spirit of Web3. Let's strike a deal. Let's underwrite this, America. You guys need some Bitcoin? I heard you're trying to set up a new strategic Federal Reserve. I got some Bitcoin.
Bang. And, that's one of my predictions we talked about for next year, probably sooner than later, but Michael Saylor, the name catchy. It's easy, even if you spell it wrong, it's easy to say, right? It's like, salute to you, sir, on the SS Bitcoin, pulling you right out of port. And I think that he gets a little tap on the shoulder from at least somebody in the government. It may not be old T-Dog, could be Musk, could be someone saying, hey, you seem like someone who knows a fair amount about Bitcoin. Maybe you should be in charge, or at least involved in setting up and running the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Where does Gary Gensler go when he leaves his post? Do you think he just disappears, or does he reinvent himself at a private company?
Yeah.
I think sometimes the cast of characters will be brand new, but also some of those old faces that you just forgot about that come through the woodwork as someone new. I think that's a really good call. And look, if he's purchasing and has the ability to, I'm not going to say that the conspiracy theory that he is uniquely manipulating the price of Bitcoin, but clearly when you're moving the amount of money that's being moved, you can move the price of Bitcoin up or down, especially if you can buy derivative products like the spot ETFs, and those kind of smooth things out the way you want. But yeah, it's no accident that this guy is buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin whenever there's even a 10% drop. And it's perfectly timed, and he just keeps growing and growing and growing.
7 hours ago, 209 million of Bitcoin. That's 2,138 Bitcoin. He's got a 74% yield in 2024, meaning he is up 74% from when he's
in a year. In a year. And if you're up 74% on $1 billion, it's a lot of
absurd,
extra hundreds of millions.
It's really, really crazy. And then the other signal to me that, it's one to watch, but we've seen a couple of other countries. We've seen Argentina and Bukele and these guys experiment with this Bitcoin strategic reserve. We know there's this crazy opportunity for countries who are indebted to the World Bank and to the IMF to now use that asset to effectively pay off their debt, to now have self-sovereignty over their country, to have self-custody over their keys. Right now, they're
No
looking
keys,
for
no country. There you go.
I mean, they're going to get to. So we've already gotten to see it play out, and then the one that strikes me is the Hong Kong today, this morning,
That big one.
saying that Hong Kong is looking to deploy a Bitcoin strategic reserve. That to me is like, I just follow the trail of the ETFs. Literally, we go back and we look at the timeline of when did Hong Kong approve the ETFs, because the US did so shortly thereafter. It is no doubt in my mind that the Hong Kong financial markets serve as a proving ground, a test net, if you will, a layer 2, maybe.
A layer 2. I like that.
In order to determine the viability of these new markets that I have been saying, new markets are being created, and here comes Hong Kong. If Hong Kong starts a Bitcoin strategic reserve, then we're late. You know what I mean? Like, of course, Michael Saylor is getting called in because he is effectively functioning as that strategic reserve. MicroStrategy is a publicly traded company, and we should go look how much does BlackRock and Fidelity and Greystone and all these other guys, how much do they own of MicroStrategy?
Of MicroStrategies.
I'm going to go look.
That's a really good one. And part of what you just said too is that it should follow that same pattern, that layer 2, right? If we wanted a spot ETF and we had Hong Kong go first to get some learnings, and now we want a Bitcoin strategic reserve, why wouldn't we want Hong Kong to go first and get some learnings? I mean, part of it too is seeing, let's watch a few of these things play out in other places. The United States government could have taken dramatic action against countries trying to get off of their own currencies and onto Bitcoin. They didn't. We're watching and learning. And I think though, the bigger indicator out of Hong Kong is, what does China do and how does China respond to Hong Kong's maneuverings? And does China view Hong Kong as its own little slice of a private company in its own country? Like the United States has the United States, but we have all these other places that are territories and pseudo related to us where we can do things and test things. Like, is it any surprise that the IRS is headquartered out of Puerto Rico? That's a little weird. So what if Hong Kong's Bitcoin reserve is its own sort of sovereign thing that sort of hangs off of China, that allows China to do stuff that it wouldn't be able to do in its own borders, try things, create things, be a layer 2 to its own country, giving them keys to manage that layer, but you're not going to layer 1. You can't get in here and change any of this fundamental logic. But underneath, hey, we got parameters for you and let you do that. So I feel like the signals for sure. Watch Hong Kong, watch Europe, and watch some of the countries that are being sanctioned by the United States government as we head in now to this like new theater of war where we're admitting as the United States government, well, we've had, troops on the ground in Syria well in advance of this coup. And it's like, oh, that's new information. Like, how many other places do we have U.S. troops who are just in these areas that are heavily sanctioned, which in theory should have large Bitcoin stores? It's not like these countries were just sanctioned yesterday. These countries have been running and buying munitions and dealing with governments for decades without US dollars. So where's the gold bars, Saddam Hussein? Well, where's the Bitcoin, Putin? Or where's the Bitcoin, Assad? And if that's something you got to think about, then now pan back. Okay, if you want to control and manage the new world order, well, you have to do everything in your power to control the way that Bitcoin moves and flows. And so to me, the new kind of power players are going to be those that can actually demonstrate that they have a reserve. And remember, when Hong Kong announces, we're going to think about creating a Bitcoin reserve, it's not like they're going to start buying Bitcoin tomorrow. Like this is something that's gone for years. They've been figuring out ways to disintermediate the US dollars. And this now is just a time when, hey, it was really easy. It's really easy to buy Bitcoin because it's a global casino. It's open 24 hours a day, and it's just a function of how much cash can you move through on ramps and off ramps without the DOJ noticing or tornado caching it or whatever. So the new players, I think, as well, are sovereign country leaders as much as they are the political or the corporate heads of the U.S. companies.
Well, and we've talked about that kind of analogy about corporations and individuals and self-sovereignty and self-custody, and does a company have the same rights as a human, and does a human have the same rights as a corporation? And it's kind of interesting when you start to think about AI agents and how humans will be treated in those transactions. I know we've talked about here that it's very feasible that an AI bot could go and start its own company. It could choose to invest in Bitcoin and use it as its own banking system, effectively to its own DeFi protocol, to borrow against its own holdings, to go out and buy other assets. And now all of a sudden you've got an AI bot making money in cryptocurrency on chain for everyone to see. I mean, that's a crazy world.
That never sleeps and never stops.
Right.
And you start to think about dystopian movies where you hear things like that. Like, this AI agent that trades Bitcoin for me and instantiated its own company, it has its own DAO. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It feels no fear, no pain, no pity, no remorse. It will not stop until your wallet is drained. Like, it's that Terminator. I just have this echoes of Terminator, of that we're going to allow the AI agents to incorporate themselves. And like you said, if you can't disambiguate the AI agent from who created it, it becomes that conversation we had 3 years ago. If I create an AI agent that's a painter, and my AI agent paints a picture, and I put the picture up for sale, the AI agent gets the proceeds. But am I responsible for that? Am I the creator of the agent, or has the agent made enough decisions of its own that it's created its own DAO to vote me out? That I, the creator of the DAO, doesn't get it. But just to bring it back around to that DeFi thing you were saying, something about that's hitting the mainstream right now, maybe it didn't. Maybe it got covered up in all the holiday news. But you catch this article, there was the IRS has just finished their ruling on a tax rule that basically requires the DeFi brokers to collect the user trading information, which basically means that DeFi brokers, so in your example of your agent who has made money with Bitcoin, who is leveraging its own assets to go and get another loan, effectively, they're saying now that this is completely okay. It follows the exact same pattern as someone who would be a securities broker in traditional markets. So what did that instantly do? It instantly made it okay for anyone who owns some amount of Bitcoin, which, as an example, could be Doge, could be Ethereum, could be whatever, to say, yes, if you own that asset and you then could create derivative products from the asset. Let's just say on our new Nextdoor app that Michael and I are going to make together, it's called Nextdoor Lending, because I can say I need $200 to get a bike for my kid for Christmas. And I go on my little Nextdoor app and Michael's there and he says, I can lend you $200 for the bike. And he's now my little micro banker, my mini banker, my DeFi securities broker. And I have some term that's put into a smart contract. I have to pay back the amount in some amount of time. If I don't, there's some interest. It's completely transparent. It's on the blockchain. There's no hidden fees or surprises. In fact, everyone else in the neighborhood can see what we just did, and he gets free promotion for that because he's like, oh, wow, Michael's so nice. He can lend people money to get Christmas presents. And it's now, as of, this was published on the 27th. This was 3 days ago, the 27th. Now it's just legal. Like, it's okay. This used to be some insane argument on Capitol Hill with Gary Gensler and the SEC and senators yelling about drawing comparisons with Pokemon cards and people going berserk. You remember this? Like, if I sell a Pokemon card, it's unregistered in the thing. It's like all these bizarre analogies to say why it's not okay. And then someone just dropped a note. It's like, hey, by the way, guys, it's all okay.
It's good now.
Here, just in time for the new year. There you go. Let's make 2025 big, guys. 2025 is going to go big. More products, more lending products.
We're going to have to wrap it up here, but I cannot wait. This is episode 96 as we head into 2025. We're going to go bang, bang, bang in January as we stare down Martin Luther King weekend, as we
Inauguration
get past
day.
inauguration. I mean, the next couple of weeks, by February, we will have a lot of clarity on our predictions, no doubt. And we will be topping out at 100 episodes of Off the Record on the Rocks. We got big plans for 2025. We got to get everybody into the WhatsApp group. We got to start building this community because we have been on it. We have been right. We continue to read the tea leaves to understand where this stuff is taking us. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it. You're not going to see it coming until it's too late. And I'm watching all of these dominoes fall. And here comes Trump and Elon and the Doge. I mean,
Doge revolution.
The Doge revolution is happening, and 2025 is going to be big, 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 no doubt. Final thoughts.
I'll talk to you next year, Michael. In the meantime, everyone, look to the full moon and hodl your wallets and your loved ones close as we head into next year.
See you next year.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join us next week for more news and all things Web3. Check, please.